Group number 3. I'm Francesca.
Alex.
Christina.
Arnaldo. Arnaldo.
Digital and analog.
Digital and analog.
So this one is about chapter 3.
It's definitely a little bit interesting because basically the chapter.
Ooh.
It's definitely my mom. Actually. Sorry. Oh my god.
I'll leave that in there.
Right. So it's a little bit complex. I feel like what made it a little bit complex is that it's, although they're 2 words with a very literal definition, people seem to have their own ideas of it. But the first base thought is that analog came first and then it was digital, because analog is very much a literal form, so it gives you something tangible. Analog is basically a medium. So the main example I feel like that stuck with me was about like vinyls, you know, so like how they kind of like created music, which is something very real, but they created it through basically like making the grooves on it, like taking sound waves.
I was like understanding it for like the whole part until like maybe like page like 70, where it's like, oh, analog comes first. I'm like, okay, I get that. And then, oh, they're different. Digital is opposed to analog. Digital is discrete. Analog is continuous. And then I was like trying to get it. And then page 70 comes along, and they're like, oh, they can be the same thing though. And then we really had digital all along, and digital kind of came.
It works in the same way that like, it's a weird analogy, but like the first thing I thought of is whenever people talk about how a rectangle can be a square, but a square can't be a rectangle. I think it kind of works the same way.
Yeah.
But also, I feel like it kind of dives deeper into just the philosophy of what digital culture is, and like how the cultural context is. It's always about what we're receiving and like what we interpret. So regardless of the medium, digital or analog, it's all the same thing. So that's why like everything is, as they say, digital in a sense.
Yeah. It does make sense, I guess, when you put it that way, because even the way, I believe it was, something has 5 points of digital.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I have that right here. Numerical representation, modularity, automation, variability, and transcoding.
Yeah, so I feel like once I started to get into that part of it, it's like, okay, it makes sense that everything is basically digital. These points are all continuous, ultimately.
And then we still receive the information the same way.
It's just kind of when you like zoom in on it, like when I was talking about modularity, like, so say you take a picture, but when you take a picture on your digital phone, it's not the same as like a regular photograph, because when you zoom in on it, you can kind of see all the pixels instead of it just blurring together.
Yeah, so you're seeing it in a different sort of way, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, and even here, analog only became continuous when it became a synonym for not digital. So, like, basically prior to digital, it was just analog. But it basically just becomes a medium for reality.
Yeah.
But now that there's digital, it kind of makes sense how, if you use that definition of it, they both are the same.
Yeah.
Because digital is ultimately a medium for like the way we perceive things too.
Yeah.
It's just the new age of it.
Like the digital reality thing that we were talking about last week, like, yeah, it's digital and it's not considered real, but it's still real because when you take the thing off, it's
still something that you experience.
In reality, it's just an alternative and unorthodox way of experiencing something.
If you look at a digital photo and like just a print of an actual film photo, and it's the same exact photo, you get the same experience from it. You get the same response. If someone didn't tell you, oh, this is a digital photo and this is from film, you wouldn't know the difference.
I have kids in my class that are photographed. I don't know the difference because I'm a painter, but some of the kids can like, they're like, oh, is that film? I can tell. I'm like,
but
But at the end of the day, like,
yeah,
for the photo itself, unless you're the person taking the photo, the audience, the people who see it, who aren't attached to it, they're gonna see an image.
Yeah.
And that's what the photo does. It provides an image.
Mm-hmm.
So like, they're gonna see the same image, they're gonna have the same response, the same experience.
But even too, it's like now with the day and age of filters and all of these things, like you
Yeah.
can realistically
Yeah.
take a digital image and try to create it to look like it was a photo.
Photoshop.
So yeah, they talked about like the authenticity of it and
Mhm.
everything. I don't know, photography is, I don't know, I feel like it's mostly digital now. I don't really think it's, I guess, analog per se.
I guess
Like-
anyone could just
like,
easily
it-
take a photo.
I just feel like it's just with anything else, but it's like, yeah, like in the 21st century, do people that this is their generation and this is where they grew up in this century, do they even know anything about photography? There's a lot of people that have only ever known how to take a picture on their cell phone. This might be even the last of the generations that have touched a real camera. In 10, 15 years, like there may be a majority of students, let's say, that have never put their hands on a real camera.
Mm-hmm.
It might be something they're passionate about creating photos and art in like the analog form, but it's almost going to be something that's like history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like anybody, I feel like so many people are making a living off of it and don't know anything about
They know
the
nothing
art
about
behind
it.
it.
No.
Like, they'll just take a random like selfie.
The stuff we read before just
Mhm.
about digital culture in general, but just in context of human history, as technology advances, like super left field example, vaccination. 50, 60 years ago, people weren't worried about that, but people were still getting sick. But now less people are getting sick because we have vaccination. So like, depending on like what you're looking at, you can see it as progress or you can see it as
Digression, basically.
digression.
I just took this one quote down. He discusses how digitality has been around for such a long time and it's just challenging culture with media. We shouldn't think of digital as being anchored to technology at all. The difference between the broken and the smooth, the difference between discrete points and continuous curves.
The way my brain processed it was basically like analog media is idexicality.
Yeah, just
More
to
or
make the
less.
physical connection with the medium.
Exactly. So it's,
Um,
and that's how they broke it down to like their symbols, icons, and dices. The symbol is the relationship of something and your brain, basically. The way
Yeah.
that your mind processes
Right.
whatever it is you're looking at. Whereas opposed to an icon, like I liked how they kind of used it as an emoji. So it's not really a symbol because it's almost however you put it into context.
Mm-hmm.
And then to go into like the index, they described it as this sign signifies its object solely by virtue of being really connected with it. And then they even like further broke that down, but that was the part that I was kind of like, this is a little bit now much. Yeah, so analog is basically a symbol because it's a medium.
Mm-hmm.
So even an icon, yeah, so it's basically the medium and something else in the natural world, and we're kind of using the medium to show relation and have our mind generate a connection between the medium and real life. So I guess when I say it that way, yeah, like pointing at something, you're like, yeah, that phone, you're like drawing a connection between the phone and your mind. I even feel like the other category of index, which was trace, I feel like that one, and it even says like it's different than DXs.
Well, I mean,
But it's like the persistence of evidence. So it's
yeah,
like
like if you're point, it's just that it's real and it's
Yeah.
which like
and
is
it has
analog.
real effects and it exists and it's in the real world. It's,
As far as like the idea of index and the existent trace, when you point at something and what you're pointing at, that is the trace, that's the evidence. So this is just a fancy way of saying like, okay, this thing exists, and this is the idea we attach to it.
And it's by you basically pointing at it.
Yeah.
In describing analog media as indexical, the belief is that media records the touch of something. So it's like you're saying, you point at something, now you're like drawing cognitive recognition to the thing that you're pointing.
Right.
You step in mud and you
Just
create
so-
an imprint.
It's like how it's just the human mind needing to give every little thing purpose.
yeah, making
Right.
it present so it's not like because I feel like digital is kind of taking over, so like we still
Yeah.
need to remind ourselves that
Yeah.
analog is still a thing.
I guess going off what you just said,
Mhm.
as far as the digital age is kind of taking over. That would be the reason why like there's so much information on this, so we can find a better way to bridge that gap and like make it all more not balanced per se, but like find the connection of how we went from this to this.
Yeah.
For that too, I guess this can make it not be analog equals idexicality, because it's basically saying that, so like, yeah, with analog, the person that made the recording was actually there. Like, everyone had to be present, right? So if you wanted to get any type of thing recorded, let's say, it had to be there. It's not like digital where like it could be one person and you can simulate this entire thing. And it's like, according to Rodowicz, digital media basically did away with the idexicality. So it kind of like replaced the need to create some type of an imprint to show realness, and it kind of replaced it with basically computers. And that, according to him, there's no longer physical traces of body, light, sound waves, or chemicals in our media. Because everything is kind of just a computer algorithm or a digital process of some form.
Was he the one who said, even with that said, that in itself is still a form of analog? Yeah, so like, even if it's just zeros and ones, that's still a form.
We art majors, like, we're basically afraid of like robots like taking over the world, like taking technology and stuff. I think we talked about what would happen if technology were to possibly draw certain this.
I think we're already at that point.
Oh man, that means pretty soon, like we're gonna have robots doing this, but not like humans. Because I drew this from an eye point of view.
Actually, I found an article, I think it was with one of the assignments, but basically there's like computerized programs that are able to tell authentic portrait from one that was like created by someone that wasn't the actual artist. Basically, like, this is crazy, like that they can basically you can basically generate a program to
there's
something
robots
fake.
that paint now.
Yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
That's something that's kind of
So-
cool, but
yeah.
kind of scares me a little bit because I feel like I might not be able to like find a personal art job that will allow me to like create this because a machine can do my damn job.
I feel like to kind of go back, I can like touch on like the Rodowicz. So he was the one who was basically saying like there are no more there's no physical anything. Everything's digital, everything's computer algorithms. You know, he basically removed the link or tried to remove the link from digital representation to the endixical relationship. But Doretta comes in and kind of criticizes that. I feel like I liked what she kind of said here because she kind of brought it back
Yeah.
and kind of was like, nah, like that's actually not what's going on. So basically, like, the loss of endixicality becomes a loss of presence because you feel like there's no more physical, there's no more medium. So that's kind of when analog becomes digital. It can actually kind of be like argue that digital is real because there's real effects, like it's in the real world. At the end of the day, you do create something that is tangible, that's real. It's just maybe the way and the processes in which it was created aren't so real and physical. It's all kind of
No, it's like you said,
digital.
it's just a bunch of ones and zeros. You're kind of like surprised when it's like evolving fast when you were like growing up or something, because I remember when I was like a little kid. As growing up, I was like super surprised.
Growing up in this generation, we're so used to the progress that we don't realize that there's like a whole generation before us that was like completely stagnant. So like for me, like I've like had a desktop, laptop, smartphone, etc., etc., etc. Whereas other people, they didn't even have a desktop.
If you like to kind of like just touch on like what you were saying, where it's like, yeah, like there's going to be generations that don't even know like don't know anything besides a smartphone and the digital ways of taking a photo. You know, I feel like I kind of like touched on that before, but it's like, yeah, like even the analog, like there's going to be people coming into this not even being able to understand like the things that they're saying. That's analog media, you know, where it's like, what is a vinyl record? Like, what is a photo? Like, what is a reel of film? what
that's
is
right.
this, you know?
I feel like anyone who like really takes their craft seriously
Mm-hmm.
and gets to that point,
They will.
they will look it up,
But
find out
that's-
themselves.
That's a niche
yeah.
market, you know, that's a niche group of people. Analog as a trend
Hmm.
might come back
Oh,
around.
like
And
Polaroid.
I was gonna say Polaroids.
Yeah.
I mean,
And these are kids that had never taken a picture in their life, and they're
Mhm.
I do feel
they're
like
like going and buying a Polaroid. I'm like, you
Yeah.
spent, do you know how much money you spent on that? You used to
Yeah.
be able to like get them for like next to nothing.
I feel like it's like it just comes down to like how we as individuals
Yeah.
utilize this technology.
Mm.
But like there's some technology that people are never gonna experience, and that's not a bad thing. Like who wants to go back to using floppy disks? Like
Yeah.
we like
or
no one
pager-
wants
or pagers.
like pagers. Like yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think the thing that like this reading does well is it does help us see digital more as an idea versus like just digital, you think it's a medium, but like this chapter opens our mind to the concept of what digital is.
Which is
Yeah.
it is important because I feel like just in general, media as a form of art, it's really about kind of like what you said, but it's like about your mind and how your mind processes it. There's not necessarily like a right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
I feel like
it's-
as long as you can kind of make a point, I feel like that's kind of just real life. Like as long as you make a valid point about
Yeah.
why you believe something,
Right.
it's not necessarily wrong. And like you said, like the book does do a good job of not being one-sided.
Yeah.
So they kind of give you all the information, and then we can do things like we did today.
In the beginning, it categorized digital and analog. Then it moved into like they're not limited to specific things. Like digital is not limited to computers, and analog isn't limited to tangible working with things. They kind of go hand in hand. And I feel like he kind of should have started off with that in the beginning of the chapter, because I kind of got a little confused because I was like,
It
oh,
was,
they're
it
opposed.
was
Yeah.
a bit everywhere, but
Yeah, it was a little confusing, but
Yeah.
like I feel like this helped.
Yeah.
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 Kind of interesting.
Yeah, for helping.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yay.
Group 3.
Oh.
We done? Yeah.
Yeah.
we're done. Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Group
That was
selfies
a
and
lot
seconds.
longer than I thought it was gonna be.
Yeah.